So where were we? We talked about Rava saying that if a Aron Kodesh breaks into pieces, you can use those pieces to make a smaller Aron Kodesh, but you cannot use it as a table. Va'amar Rava, hai prisa devala l'meavde prisa l'sifrei shari l'chumshin asir. If Rava says that if the curtain of the Aron Kodesh becomes worn, you can use it to make a new covers for the Sfarim, the scrolls, Shari, Sifrei Torah, L'chumshim Asir, but you can't use it to cover Stam Chumashim books or the scrolls which were Vayikra on its own and Shemot on its own, not actual Sifrei Torah. V'amarava, Hanis Vile, Dechumshe, Umekatre, Desafre, Tashvish Kujanin Hu, V'nignazim Pshita, V'nignazin. So, says Rava, another halacha. The Zvile, which are, Rashi tells us, Kemin Dus Kamei, and Dus Kamei earlier in the Gemara, Rashi defined as bags or rucksacks of some kind to put the boxes, to put books in. So, the Zvile of Chumashim, the bags for Chumashim, and Kamtere, the Sifrei, and a box for which is for books, they are Tashmei Kedusha. They are used for Kedusha, not for mitzvah, and therefore they need to be put in Geniza as opposed to thrown away. And the Gemara says, Pshita, isn't this obvious? Mao de Tema, you could have thought, Hani lav lechavod avdinan, Netroy ba'ama avide kamashmanan. No. So, what could you thought? Since they only being used to honor, they're only being used to protect the books, not to honor the books. As such, you might think we only put into Geniza stuff which are used for honoring the holy things. Kamashman, no, even if it's used for just protecting the thing, then we also would need to put it in the Geniza. Hau be Knishta diudai Romai, dave petiach lahu idrona de hava machit bemet. V'havu ba'u kane lemea l'tzvei hatam atu amulei l'rava amal lahu dalu tevota otvua davale klei etz hasui l'nachat k'etz hasui l'nachat eno mekber tuma v'chotzes b'fnei tuma amulei rabanan l'rava v'azimlin de metaltelei lei ki manach sefer Torah ilavei v'avalei metaltelei mele v'rikam. So, a bit of a long thing I just read. There was a shul in Bavel of Roman Jews, meaning they were Jews who made it to Rome and then left Rome and came back to Bavel. And they had in their shul, it was open to an idrona. Rashi explains that idrona is some kind of room that they would place the people who passed away, some not mausoleum, some kind of morgue inside the shul, and it was left there until it was buried. And Kohen wanted to come into this shul and daven there, and they can't because it's Tamei Met, right? Because there's a dead person there. They come to Rav and ask, what do we do? Amaluhu dalu tevot otvua. They said, put there an Aron Kodesh and put it in the place of where the opening to this room is, and it blocks it. And why? And why would that be okay? Why would that be considered partition? Because it's a kli'etz, it's a wooden vessel which is made to be placed in a place. And a wooden kli, which his intention is to place there, to be placed somewhere, is chotzitz. Doesn't receive tuma, and is chotzitz b'fnei tuma, creates a partition between the impurity and the purity. Amulei Rabbanan l'Rava v'ha zimni metatel elei kimach sefer Torah ilavei v'ale metatel mele v'rikam. Says rabbis, hold on a second, it's a wonderful idea, but sometimes they move this box to place a Sefer Torah on top of to read it. And then it's considered a Kli, which is moved when it's empty, and when it's full, meaning it's moved. And then Rava replies and says, Ihachi lo efshar. If so, then I don't have a solution. And the Kohen wouldn't be able to come in. Why is this story brought here? Probably because Rava is involved, and it's again to do with halachot or hilchot beit knesset. And we mentioned Rava about the use of different things and the holiness of different things. One of them was the teva, the Aron Kodesh. So this is another halacha with regards to where Rava is involved in ruling on it, and with regards to beit knesset. Amar Zutra mitpachot svarim shabalu osim otam tzarchichin lemet mitzvah avzohi knizatan. Zutra says this: the mitpachot, the cloths of the Sfarim, which have become worn, you use them to make the clothing, the shrouds for the dead people, for Met Mitzvah, which means a dead person who doesn't have anyone to see to the burial. And so we may not be able to raise money for real shrouds, so we can take these cloths, and use them to create shrouds for the dead person. And this is their disposal, the way that you dispose them, b'chavod kniza. You mean they go in the ground on the dead person. Rava says a Sefer Torah which has become worn, you bury it, dispose of it in a respectful way, by a Talmid Chacham, in the burial place of a Talmid Chacham, in the grave with him. And even if he's just a Shoneh Halachot. What's a Shoneh Halachot? Rashi says, Kloma afilu lo shimesh Talmid Chachamim b'Hashas, u'Gemara ela b'Shemot u'Varaita. Even if he hasn't used Talmid, being learnt by Talmid Chachamim in the Shas, in Shish Mishnah, he hasn't studied Gemara lots. Rather, what's he done? Ela b'Mishnah u'Varaita. He's only learned Mishnah and Baraitot. Even then, he's considered holy enough to be buried with the Sefer Torah. Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov u'V'Klei Cheres Shneimar. Natata b'Klei Cheres leman yamdu yamim rabim. And Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says you don't just place it straight into the ground, the Sefer Torah, rather you put it in a kli cheres, in a pottery earthenware vessel, as it says in, I believe, Yirmiyahu, sorry, Natata b'Kli Cheres leman yamdu yamim, and you shall place the book, right? This is when Yirmiyahu was told to buy land from his uncle, and he says, why? Redeem the land for his uncle. And Yirmiyahu was like, but why? We're about to get exiled. Why don't you redeem the land? We're about to get exiled. So why should I redeem it? And God answers, don't worry, you're coming back. It's a sign that you're coming back. And you're going to put this shtar kinyan, this contract of acquisition, in a pottery vessel. And then when you come back, and then it will survive for a long time. And then when you come back, you'll be able to take it back and prove that you own, that your uncle or your family owns the land. And that's where this Amora learns this halacha from. He says from the pasuk, "V'natatam b'kli cheres." Natatam, sorry, b'kli cheres leman yamdu. And you should place it in a earthenware vessel so it lasts for a long time. And now we have a small change. 1 second. Amar. It says v'amar in brackets. There's a change here in the Haggadah Sionim that don't not v'amar, because v'amar would imply that it's in addition to what we just said. This is, however, something different. Amar Rav Papi Mishmei Derav. Now there's another addition. Derava Mebei Kanishta Lebei Rabanan Shari Mebei Rabanan Lebei Kanishta Asir. Rashi explains, you can make a Beit Knesset into a Beit Midrash, but you can't make a Beit Midrash into a Beit Knesset. That's lowering its holiness. Rav Papa and Shmei Rava Madne Ibcha, and Rav Papa, in the name of Rava, taught the other way around. We're on Kafav Amubet, three words, last words. Amrav Acha Kvate de Rav Papi Mistabra. So he says, Rav Acha says that it makes more sense that Rav Papi's right, that you can make a Beit Knesset into a Beit Midrash, but you can't make a Beit Midrash into a Beit Knesset. There was another opinion Rav Papa said in the name Rava, the other way around, that you can make a Beit Knesset. You can Beit Midrash into a Beit Knesset, but you can't make a Beit Knesset into a Beit Midrash. Now, Rav Acha is saying the halacha is like the one which says you can make a Beit Knesset into a Beit Midrash, but you can't Beit Midrash into a Beit Knesset. Damar Yeshua ben Levi. One second. As Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, Beit Knesset mutar la'asot Beit Midrash. As Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, you can make a Beit Knesset into a Beit Midrash. Shema Mina. The Gemara then says that we do indeed rule like Rav Papi. Okay. Dash Bar Kapara, my dichtiv. What does it mean about when Nebuzaradan, who was the officer of Nebuchadnezzar, when he was destroying the Beit Mikdash, he said, "V'sof et Beit Hashem, et Beit Hamelech, et kol Batei Yerushalayim, et kol Beit Gadol Saf Beish." What does it mean when it says he burnt the house of God, he burnt the house of the king, he burnt all the houses in Yerushalayim, and he built all big houses. He burnt all big houses in Yerushalayim with fire? What does that mean? Beit Hashem is a Beit Mikdash. God's house. That means Beit HaMikdash. Beit HaMelech, Elu Paltarin Shemech. What does Beit HaMelech mean? It's the palaces of the kings, right? That's quite obvious. Vet Kol Batei Yerushalayim, and all the houses of Yerushalayim, what does that mean? Kemashman, where they lived. That's again. But the one which is a bit harder for us to understand than all big houses. What are all big houses? Vet Kol Beit Gadol, Saraf Be'esh, and all the big houses he burnt with fire. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. There's a machloket. What does it mean a big house? It's the house in which Torah was made great. This is the Beit Midrash. And one says, no, it's the house which is great because of the tefillah which is prayed within it. What? In some way. You're right, but they were still davening in some way, Tehillim, praying.
But they didn't need the whole Beit Midrash, like the whole Beit Knesset before that. Then they just do it out on the field whenever they wanted.
It doesn't seem like anyone's bothered by your question.
Maybe they did.
Maybe it was built because of destruction that they were praying. I don't know. Maybe it was a spontaneous Beit Knesset. The Gemara explains, "Man da'amar Torah, tichtiv Hashem chafetz leman sidko yagdir Torah v'yadir." The one who says it was the Torah, that was what was the great house, the big houses, and it's the Beit Midrash. What's his proof? The pasuk from Yeshayahu, "Hashem chafetz leman sidko yagdir Torah v'yadir." In that pasuk it says Yagdil Torah, Yagdil from the word Gadol. Therefore we know that Torah is the Gadol, and therefore when it says Gadol, the big house there, it must mean the Beit Midrash. Uman Dama Tfilah, the one who says Tfilah, Tichtiv Saprana Hagdolat Asher Asa Elisha. Tell me now the great things which, or the big things which Elisha did. Elisha Davad. What are the great things that Elisha did? It's referring to when he brings the person back to life. How did Elisha bring the person back to life? By just praying. And Elisha, both Eliyahu and Elisha brought back people from life. He did. Elisha ben Ashunamit. And Gehazi tried to get reward. Gehazi was there.
Was that the one
when she in fact, yes, she was the one who jumped. No, the oil, which kept filling up.
Yeah, it kept filling up, and his son died, and he brought his son back to life.
Yeah, and she jumped on his feet, and Gehazi, the servant, pushed him away. Okay, so how did he do this? He did this through tefillah, and therefore there is a connection between the word gadol and tefillah, and therefore we learned that Beit Gadol can mean also Beit Tefillah, like a Beit Knesset. Okay, Tistayim, the Gemara is now going to prove it. To Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who the Amar Makom Shemagalim B'Torah. There's proof, right? We said one said this, one said that. We didn't know who said which. The Gemara is now going to prove that maybe, or there's a hint towards the Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is one of the ones who said one of these things. We can point at that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said one of the things specifically. Tistem, the Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, hu damar makom shekelim b'Torah. It would make sense, or there's a siman that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is the one that said it's the place where the Torah was made great, meaning a Beit Midrash. Damar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, Beit HaKnesset mutar lo soto Beit Midrash. Because Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said the Beit Knesset can be made into a Beit Midrash. That means that he thinks that a Beit Knesset is a lower level than a Beit Midrash, and therefore if it says Nuvuz Zadan got rid of the big houses, it would seem that big houses for him is the Beit Midrash, and the Sugya Shmamina. Yes, that makes sense. Okay, fine. Yes, alright. Then we are quoting a bit of the Mishnah. Okay. If they sold the Torah, they can't take other books. Now this is, we went in the beginning of Mishnah, we went up in level. If you bought a courtyard, you have to buy a shul, an aron. Now we're going in the background, the other way around. If you buy a Sefer Torah, you can't buy other books. This is the other way around. So it's still the same. It's just comparing them in the other order.
Going down to the bar.
Right, yeah, Femod, yeah, going down the server. You always have to buy something which is of higher kedusha. Ibailu, challenge. Ma'ulim Sefer Torah yashan likapo chadash. Can you sell an old Sefer Torah to buy a new Sefer Torah? That's the question of Gemara. Kem de lo ma'alele asu. O dilma kem de leka liluya achina shapidami. Or perhaps, since a Sefer Torah is the most holy thing it goes, since you can't go holier, then you can at least go equal. If you sold the Sefer Torah to buy a new Sefer Torah, you've got nowhere to progress, so it's going to be mutar. Or maybe not. There was two sides. It's not sure yet. So Gemara asks, is it possible it's also because you're not going up, or maybe because you can't go up anyway, it's good enough to just buy another Sefer Torah? So the Gemara wants to prove it from our Mishnah. Alright, so where are we? So Gemara isn't sure yet, but hopefully it's going to come up with a solution. Tashma. We taught in the Mishnah, Aval machru Torah lo yichu sfarim. When it says, it's quoting our own Mishnah. If you sold a Sefer Torah, you can't take books. Books in general. Sfarim hu delo ha-Torah b'Torah shapir dami. It sounds like saying, if you buy a Sefer Torah, don't buy books, which sounds like it could be implying you can't buy books, but what can you buy? Another Sefer Torah. The Gemara rejects that. But
Same level, not going down the level.
who says it's enough to buy the same level? Maybe have to go up. Manitin diavad. Chika mibaylan lechachila. From the Mishnah you can prove what you do b'diavad. But it doesn't what you do b'diavad, but not lechachila. Meaning the Mishnah says if you already sold it, then what can you do? Then you can buy another Sefer Torah. But should you? Gemara says no, and therefore there's no proof still. The wording of the Mishnah.
Yeah, what is the point of selling one and buying another one?
Because the other one's old. You want a new one. It says that was the question to begin with.
Oh.
You're selling an old Sefer Torah to buy a new one.
Same price?
Probably not, but you're using some of that money to get a new one. So the Mishnah is saying if you've done it already, you can buy another one. But are you allowed to do that? That's what we're trying to clarify. I have an old Sefer Torah. I have a new Sefer Torah in front of me. Am I allowed to use the old Sefer Torah to buy a new Sefer Torah? If the Mishnah implies there's no prohibition, when you've already done it, that's something else. But who says you're allowed to sell a Sefer Torah to begin with? To buy a new one. So the Gemara says like this. Tashma, learn from somewhere else. There's a brighter. Golim Sefer Torah b'mitpachot chumashin, v'chumashin b'mitpachot nevim v'chtuvim, אבל לא נביאים וכתובים בmitpachot chumashin, ולא chumashin b'mitpachot Sefer Torah. Tanimiat golim Sefer Torah b'mitpachot chumashin, mitpachot chumashin in, mitpachot Sefer Torah lo. Okay, so they used to. You don't really need this in Ashkenazi Sefer Torah because the way they are made, you can just to move them along. You just hold the wood and don't have to basically never have to touch a Sefer Torah, a Ashkenazi Sefer Torah's parchment unless you open it too much and then it falls. Yeah, you know when guys get a bit too confident when they're doing the Hagba. Yeah, and then you have to jump in with the Sefer Torah and pick it up. Sephardi Sefer Torah.
But they don't touch it. They grab it with their tongue.
Yeah. Sephardi Sefer Torah are built within a box, right? I mean, we've all seen them.
Yeah.
And they're a lot harder to be got out, and you actually would need to move them.
On the wooden sticks, not like wooden.
Sometimes, but it's a lot harder. You can't get the traction that you get in the Ashkenazi.
They go very fast.
Yeah. So, what they used to do is you can liglol, you can spin or turn turn the Sefer Torah with mitpachot of chumashim, with the cloths of a chumash. What they used to have, they have books. They used to have scrolls, like a Sefer Torah, but only with Breishin, only with Shema'in, only with, right? I mean, you read from the Sefer Torah, but you also have ones with just Chumashim in, like private people have their own. I know how it works. So you can turn the Sefer Torah with the mitpachot of the Chumash.
It's like the covering or the actual Chumash paper.
No, the cloths to turn it. They get a cloth and they, instead of touching the parchment, they use the cloth to turn it. They talk like a talit, like the people do with talit. So you can do that process of turning the Sefer Torah with the cloths from other lower books, from Chumash books, and also Chumashim Nevim Ketuvim, and you can use cloths which are used for Nevim Ketuvim to turn Chumashim, but you can't have a lot of Nevim Ketuvim Chumashim, but you can't turn parchments of Nevim Ketuvim with mitpachot, the cloths of a Chumashim, and you can't use the Chumashim, you can't use the mitpachot of a Sefer Torah to turn a Chumash. However, we have learned that what? You can turn a Sefer Torah with the cloths of a Chumash. From that you can learn why didn't it say? It specifically said you can use a Chumash cloth to turn a Sefer Torah, but it didn't say you can use a Sefer Torah cloth of a different Sefer Torah to turn another Sefer Torah.
Because you would assume if you go one down, you would assume you're on the same level.
Maybe, but the Gemara is now trying to prove from this. 1 second, the Gemara is trying to prove from here. You can disagree with the proof. Maybe we will in a second. It does in a second. That you are, by using a cloth from a lower thing to a holy thing, that's fine. But if it doesn't say on the same level, that would maybe imply that you can't sell an old Sefer Torah for a new Sefer Torah because you're keeping it on the same level.
The Gemara doesn't say obvious stuff. That's the thing from that. It doesn't say something's obvious. It doesn't say it. It just assumes you'll figure it out.
No, I know you have. I don't know why that's this kind of case.
Because if you go down, obviously it's going to be as well.
Who says? You're saying it's obvious. That doesn't mean it's necessarily obvious. And that's actually disproving you because if it wouldn't say it if it was obvious.
No, yeah, that's why it doesn't say that.
No, but it seeing as it doesn't say it, either way you don't. That's just because you think it's obvious. It could also not say it because it's not the rule.
Why would it?
What? Because maybe you have to go up in holiness and staying on the same level is enough. Okay. Well, look, we had this at the beginning of Sugya. Is it enough to stay equal, or do you have to go up and there's a problem, or because two things, or you have to go up and there's no way of going up, so you can't, or because you can't go up, it's okay to stay on the same level. There's two. The Gemara is unsure. Gemara is its own question. Okay, so. Gemara rejects that and says, Ema Seifa. Lo chumashim b'mitpachot Sefer Torah. Ha Torah b'Torah shapir dami. So from the beginning it says, you can't, from the chumashim, you can't use the mitpachot of Sefer Torah. That implies, Ha Torah b'Torah shapir dami. That would infer that you can't use the mitpachot, the cloth, for chumash, but what? You can use mitpachot Sefer Torah for what? For a Sefer Torah, a different Sefer Torah. Ela ma'aleka lemishma mina. But you can't learn it from there, from our Mishnah, because if there's two ways of learning it, we learn from one place of the Mishnah the other way around, another part of the Mishnah the other way around. So the Mishnah is not, there can't be a proof because it's two ways. Okay? So now we're left with not having proof. So we bring a different proof. Tashma, we learn in a Braita. Manichim Sefer Torah al Gabe Torah, v'Torah al Gabe Chumashim, v'Chumashim al Gabe Nevi'im Ketuvim, v'lo Nevi'im Ketuvim al Gabe Chumashim, v'lo Chumashim al Gabe Torah. I see a lot of people not being makpid about this, and I also it frustrates me crazy that people put things on top of. I'm doing it myself now. You're putting things on top of books. You shouldn't put things on top of books. You shouldn't put a. No, you can hold a safer. You shouldn't put a pen on top of it. You only not put a pen on a book if it's helping you find your place or not lose your place. You shouldn't. Tons of people. We were in a certain yeshiva a week ago.
I thought Chumash is the only one you can't put things on top.
No, have it. Like what? You can put a piece of an apple on top.
You can put an apple on top of Siddur. Really? I always made sure to keep Chumash on top of it always.
No, that's true. Chumash is supposed to be on top of any other book.
Everything else.
I don't know if there's other opinions. Maybe in English it's a bit different, but that's the opinion which I know. Anyway, so Menachim Sefer Torah Gabe. So you can put a Sefer Torah on top of a Sefer Torah. You can put a Sefer Torah on top of other Chumashim. You can put Chumashim on top of Nevi'im Ketuvim. But you don't put Nevi'im Ketuvim on top of Chumashim. You don't put Chumashim on top of Sefer Torah. From that we learn, if you put a Sefer Torah on top of Sefer Torah, they are the equal holiness. That would imply that what? You can sell a Sefer Torah, an old Sefer Torah, to buy a new Sefer Torah. That would be the implication. Now, Gemara is going to guess what?
If you put one on top of the other, where's that?
Meaning, because you have to put things holier on top of the holiest on the top.
But two Chumash on top of each other, that's fine.
Yeah, fair.
Doesn't mean you can sell one. Does that actually you can't sell one Chumash and buy another?
No, but the point is, because we could say you can never put a Sefer Torah on top of each other. Why? Because they're the same holiness. You can only put something which is more holy on top of it. We don't say that. You can pile up Sefer Torah.
What if what if it's your job to sell a Chumash and Sefer Torah? You only buy holier stuff with the money, then you're screwed. You don't buy anything. Your business just fails. Because you can only buy more. You can't buy food, you can't buy anything. Like sofas, they only write Sefer Torahs, and they can only buy Sefer Torahs with the money.
No, why? They can only buy Sefer Torah. According to your logic, why is that different? Because here we're talking about a guy who owns a Sefer Torah as opposed to someone who's writing a Sefer Torah.
It's the guy who makes it.
Yeah, I know, but he's been paid to.
It's a Chumash, like a bookstore. There's loads of Chumash. It's his Chumash. He sells it.
Yeah, but this is talked. It sounds quite clear that this is what's owned by the community, not owned by a private guy.
Oh, so this is not owned.
It's all right. Also, if you make a condition when you buy it, that's different. You can also make a precondition. Okay. Right. So hanacha ka'amarta shani hanacha lo efshar dilo tema hachi micha hechi karchinan v'akayativ dapa achavre ela kem delo efshar shari hakanami kem delo efshar shari. Okay, so it's like this. Gemara refuses it, and then it goes back on the refusal. You brought proof from the fact that you can place Sifrei Torah on top of other Sifrei Torah. Placing on Sifrei Torah is different because there's no other option. There's no other solution. Why? Because if you don't say there's no other solution for that, then 1 second, when you wrap up a Sefer Torah, anyway, you're automatically putting a Sefer Torah on top of Sefer Torah. Why? Because the parchments are rolled up on each other. Breshit, which is in the middle, right, or the closest to wood, is got, Veit Chanan on top of it. Yeah, how is that possible? It must be because there's no other solution other than that. So, Vakayativ Dapa Chavri. Each page is on the other page. Rather, it must be Kevan Deloev Shari. It must be because there's no other way of doing it. It's Shari. Says the Gemara, Hachanami Kevan Deloev Shar. Just like it's impossible to avoid putting the parchments on top of each other when you roll them up, so too it's impossible not to put Sifrei Torah on each other. You can't build an Aron Kodesh without Sifrei Torah leaning on each other. It's just going to happen, and therefore it must be mutar because of that. So we still don't have a proof for the fact whether you can. We don't have a definitive proof yet if you can sell one Sifrei Torah to buy another. So we bring a new proof. Tashma, Dama Rabbi Babachana says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, because of what Rabbi Shimon Gamliel the Tana said, Lo Imkar Adam Sefer Torah Yashan Likach Bo Chadash. You cannot sell a old Sefer Torah to buy a new one. So now we have an explicit proof in the name of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel who says it is Asur. So the Gemara is now going to qualify what he said. Hatam Mishum Lipshuta. That was because of negligence, that we say you can't sell an old Sefer Torah to get a sofer to write you a new one. Why? Because we think we're worried about negligence. He's going to take the money and I'm buying a new Sefer Torah, but then what's he going to do with the money? Not get around to buying a new Sefer Torah. But when we say when we said that we're worried about the answer, right? We asked the question. Well, if the answer is so obvious, then we should have said Rabbi Shimon Gamliel quite a while ago. So what must be the answer? That case of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is when we're worried about pshuta, negligence, or even like intentionally not doing it. But what we were talking about was when there's a new Sefer Torah sitting there ready, meaning we don't suspect that badly. I have an old Sefer Torah. I have a new Sefer Torah. I want to sell the old Sefer Torah and buy the new Sefer Torah, which is standing right in front of me. There's no chashash. We're not going to suspect him for being negligent. That's what we were talking about. That was what we weren't sure about. What are you saying?
He's going to buy the old Sefer Torah because I wasn't corrected. If he doesn't want any more, it must be a reason why. Let's say it's possible or something.
Well, no, it might be too possible for him to be able to afford to fix it.
It's a Chumash or a Torah?
It's a literal Sefer Torah.
Oh.
Sometimes you can have 10 mistakes in a Sefer Torah and it's just too expensive for the community to fix, so they leave it in their Aron with for years and years.
Do you have a guy that fixes Torahs as a hobby?
You do?
No,
are you asking or saying?
I'm asking if there could be such a person.
I'm sure there are. I'm sure there might be sofrim who retire and who do stuff for free. Tashma, Dama Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Meir, Ein mochrim Sefer Torah ela lemod Torah v'lisa isha. Shma mina Torah b'Torah shapir dami. Says the Gemara in the name, coming here teaching from Rabbi Yochanan in the name of the Tana Rabbi Meir, you don't sell a Sefer Torah. You can only sell a Sefer Torah if it's to learn Torah. Meaning to pay, so you have a wage or money to then be able to learn Torah, and to use the money to marry a wife. And if selling Sefer Torah is allowed to be able to learn Torah, for sure it's allowed for buying a new Sefer Torah itself. Like you're buying a Sefer Torah. You're allowed to sell a Sefer Torah to get a wife, to pay the dowry, to pay the. It's a very, very, very praiseworthy thing. Here, however, we're talking about it for his own wedding as opposed to funding someone else's wedding, which also may be right. Anyway, Shemamina Torah b'Torah shapi daim. That implies, or we learn from that you can sell a Sefer Torah to buy another Sefer Torah. Dima shani limud, shalimud mivid de maaser. Ishanami shlo tova l'shel yatsa. Ava Torah b'Torah lo. Says, come on, hold on, maybe that's different. What did we say? It said you're allowed to sell a Sefer Torah to learn. Maybe you're allowed to sell a Sefer Torah to learn because learning brings you to act, it brings you to do mitzvot. However, selling a Sefer Torah, to buy a Sefer Torah doesn't necessarily bring you to act. You had a Sefer Torah beforehand, it doesn't necessarily bring you closer to doing mitzvah. You do mitzvot anyway, you had a Sefer Torah anyway. What's the big change? Also, in Isha, it might be different. To marry a wife might be different because of the mitzvah in Isha, right? So we are told how many kids you have to be Mekayim Pruvu to fulfill the mitzvah of multiplying.
No.
Boy and a girl. Okay, 1 and 1. Now, however, is it enough to stop there? No, not because it's what? You're not Yotzi, unless the grandchildren. Anyway, so V'lisa isha nami. So anyway, you did your minimum of 2. Are you supposed to do more? Right? So it says pruvu. It's enough to have 2. However, pasuk in Yeshayahu says lo to bara isha. what did I just say? Loto bara l'shevet yatsa. The world wasn't created to be desolate; it was created to be settled. Meaning, we are supposed to have more than two, because we need to, like you said, what you said three, because it makes sense. But that's not from Puruvu. Multiplying is you're one and now you're two. Okay, your wife is also one, but you are multiplying. You only one person before, you're two. You create two. From Yishar we learn that we're supposed to settle the land. Aval Torah, but Torah doesn't increase things. Okay, so maybe we can conclusively get an answer. Taraban lo mikol adam sefer Torah. Man should not sell a sefer Torah. Avapi she'enot tzarich lo. Even if he doesn't need the sefer Torah anymore. Yet again, Amar Rabban Shimon Gamliel. Rabban Shimon Gamliel also said, "I feel ein lo ma yochal or machal sefer Torah or pito eno sima bracha leolam." Even if he has nothing to eat, says Rabban Shimon Gamliel. Even if he doesn't have anything to eat, and because of that, he sells his Sefer Torah or his daughter as a slave, he will not see through the money he makes bracha forever. Meaning, you can do it because you don't have any food, but it won't bring you bracha. Okay. It sounds that we are not conclusive with the answer because we don't have an answer.
What do we do today then?
It says Ava Torah b'Torah lo. Sorry, the Shulchan Aruch paskins like Torah b'Torah lo. You can't buy an old sefer. You can't sell an old sefer Torah to get a new sefer Torah. So what do? They put it in Geniza. They're done. And when a community doesn't want them anymore, you'd have to just put it in Geniza and make money elsewhere, or give it to a different community.
What's Geniza?
You bury it. Okay.
You didn't just collect them. The copy shops are like 50 cents.
I mean, you can, but eventually it's possible. And eventually, I don't know if you have to wait for the sefer Torah to be possible to put it in. Okay. Do I continue or not? I have 3 minutes. Okay, I'm going to try to the next big sugya. We said that you can't use the leftover money for non-holy things as well. We'll explain. Amar Rava. Pardon? Where's the Mishnah? Maybe we'll see. Oh no, I can't do that in 3 minutes. Amar Rava, lo shanu elak shemachu ve'otiru, aval gavu ve'otiru mutar. So, when we say that, let's say I sold a Sefer Torah, or I sold a courtyard, a shul, and I, with the next thing up, use 1,000,000 of the shekels to buy the next level up, and I have 200,000 left. What can I do with the 200,000? Do I have to also only use it for holier things, or can I use it for other things? So Rava says that the limitation of using something which is holier is only true when you sold it and something's left. But if I do a fundraiser, guys, give me 1,000,000 to buy a new Sefer Torah, and then I've got 100,000 left, then I can use it for whatever I want. So if I've sold a holy thing and I've leftover money, then I'm limited. But if I've raised money, then with the leftover money from the fundraiser, I can use it for other things. Abaye challenges Rava. Eitve Abaye, b'mei davrim amurim, he brings a brighter. Shelo hitnu, val hitnu afilu l'duchsusia mutar. Abai says, when is this law applicable? When they didn't make a precondition. But if they didn't make a precondition, you can even use the leftover money for duchsusia. What's duchsusia? We're going to explain in a second in the Gemara. Hechidami. What's the case? If they sold it and they left over money, what precondition can they make? Because the money has holiness, because the Mishnah said so. Says the Gemara to understand what Abai said. What's Abai talking about? Abai is talking about a case in which they make a precondition on the fundraiser. That's when you can use leftover money. If there's a small print in, or they made a public precondition or not public precondition that the money left over can be used for other things. But if they did a fundraiser without saying leftover money will be used for other things, then you can't use it for other things. You can only use it for things that you raise money for. Right, Ella. Okay, Gemara says like this with an answer: Lolam, even if you sell it and there's money left over. The Brighter is talking about the Brighter is trying to say this. In which case does it apply? It's when the 7 good men of the city don't make a precondition with the other people of the city there. But if the 7 people of the city, when they sell an object, say when we sell it and if there's leftover money, we're going to use it for something else, they said this in front of the other people of the city, they can even use it for tukhsusia. Now, what's a tukhsusia? The Gemara is going to say, Amalei Abaye, Laum Rabbanan Dava Mesed Manita, Kamida Veshesh Mishmele Lach Rav Shesh Mai Tukhsusia. So Abaye says to the rabbis who were sorting out the Brightot in front of Rav Sheshet, whoever heard from Rav Sheshet what Tukhsusia means? Amalei Hachi Amar Rav Sheshet Parasha Tamata. What is Rav Sheshet would say that Tukhsusia is the horse rider of the city.
7 of them?
No, not 7. No, meaning if the 7 men of the city make a precondition that leftover money can be used, it can even be used for Tukhsusia. What's Tukhsusia? It's the man who's on the back of a horse who is available for the king to send him to the local leader when they need it, when there's some attack, when there's some messenger, on the back of a horse. They can even use it for this non-holy purpose. Amalei Abaylahu Meraban Dava Misananita. Oh no, we said that. Amar Abaye Hilkach Haisu Merabanan. There was a when he heard that Abaye, he said, this young Talmid Chacham Suva Merabanan Teshemale Milta that heard this law, V'lo Yada Perusha Neshei Kamei Teshchiach Kamei Rabanan. What should he do? He should always, when a Talmid Chacham, a young Talmid Chacham, has forgotten his learning or doesn't know something, or has come across a word he doesn't know, he should always ask the rabbis he should always ask the person who's in front very often in front of the rabbis learning with them, because he's in such close proximity to this great rabbis, there's no way he won't have heard the answer to the question. And that's you're not allowed to teach halakha in front of your rabbi.
No, if your rabbi's there and someone else there, you should ask the rabbi the question, not someone else.
No, the rabbi isn't there. That's what it's saying.
Oh. I thought you said like someone the rabbi, like so the rabbi's learning next to someone. So you meant like let's say the rabbi's learning next to someone, the guy's learning behind
No, they're asking the rabbis who've learned with this rabbi before. That's who you ask. Don't ask other people, ask him.